These are game shows that absolutely ruined people's lives. And the first one that ruined the most people's life was Extreme Home Makeover. If you guys didn't remember the show, it was everywhere in the early 2000s to like right around 2010. It finally ended in 2012, but mainly because all those people you saw get the house makeover, only 1 out of 4 families were financially able to keep those homes within a year after the show was over. And almost none of them were able to keep it up long term at all. So the shows were decimating people. They would give them these nice big houses and they would remodel them and remake them. And the bad thing was their property taxes would raise so much that they couldn't afford the property taxes. Not only that, a lot of times with these big house expansions, their utilities would go up. And then more so, since that was considered a gift, if they gifted them a $200,000 makeover, they actually at the end of the year would have to pay taxes on that $200,000 gift, which in California, which is where most of the homes were, that's a luxury tax of around $70,000 to $100,000. Most people didn't have that sitting in the bank, so they'd have to sell the home just to get out of having to pay these property taxes and everything. They still had to pay them, but at least they could sell the home to use that money to make it, and then they would have to use the profits to buy another small home like they already had before. So now they're just right back at square one. It happened a lot, and this is the most famous family it happened to. This is actually the Harvey family. Now, the Harvey family, this happened to them in 2005 in Michigan, and you've probably heard this story before. The sweet little girl that nominated the cancer ward to get a makeover instead of her own home. And the producer said, "Oh, how sweet." They remade the cancer ward, which is awesome. The hospital can afford that. But then they gave their tiny 1,200 square foot home and turned it into a 6-bedroom mansion. That's what they did. That sounds amazing. And it was for the first, I don't know, like month, because after the show left, their utility bill went from $400 a month to almost $1,300 a month. And they were not making ends meet that well as it was already. So now you got $1,000 more a month payment. 2, this is the most like weird part about this, is because it was very publicized where it was at and this gained national attention, people knew where they lived. And because their house got full of like brand new cool stuff, people were literally robbing their house like every other week. Their house got broke into so many times and they could not afford security kit systems because like I said, they're barely making it by and they have this huge utility payment now. And then at the end of the year, their property tax was quintuple what it was the year before. They could not afford it, and then less than 1 year of getting that dream mansion, they had to sell it. And because of the gift taxes and everything else, they essentially made no money on this. It's crazy. They just went through, they said, one of the worst financial burdens of their entire life. They got a really cool house to live in for less than a year, but they said the struggle and the burdens of having to figure out how to get out of this thing was not worth it at all in the slightest. Arlene Nicholas was another famous one. Her property tax went from $2,000 a year to $7,500 a year. Her utilities went up, and then she got in a car wreck like right after the show, so then she wasn't able to work. That happened, and before the year was up, she already was going through eviction. She actually lost her original home and was worse than when the show came in. The same thing happened to Brian Walford. He was a widowed father of 8 girls and boys. I don't know why I said girls so heavily. Anyhow, he was a widowed father of 8. And essentially the same thing happened. His property tax, his house went from a 1,200 square foot home to a 4,300 square foot home. His property tax like quadrupled. Utility bills skyrocketed. And once again, he got hit with that gift tax and could not afford it. Within a year, they were out of the house. You guys might remember another show that was kind of similar, but you would just win a house. And it was the HGTV Dream Home Sweepstakes. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. You can enter the sweepstakes and you get a free mansion. Wow. Except it's not free, because the gift taxes on the mansion would range between $700,000 and $900,000. You could apply to get a loan to cover that. Most people did not have the credit availability or the income to support a $700,000 to $900,000 loan to pay these gift taxes. And you could not take property first and then resell it to make a little bit. No, you couldn't do that. So actually less than 5% of all the people on HGTV Dream House Sweepstakes actually kept the house they won. Less than 5%. The show was essentially just earning money for free being a show, because all those people you saw win the house, 95% of them did not actually go through with winning the house because they could not afford to. So you might be saying, Matt, why did they enter the sweepstakes in the first place? Well, probably for the same reason I'm telling you now. Most people don't know that. Just like when you watch Price is Right, less than quarter of the people that win cars actually get to keep the cars, because before they're allowed to take possession of the car, they have to pay roughly, after all the taxes are done, about a third of what that car's value is. So for example, if they win a $30,000 car, they're going to be paying about $10,000 to $12,000 before they get to take possession of that car. So you're really not winning a free car, you're winning a heavily discounted car. Now, a lot of these people that do win these cars, they'll get a loan to pay for it, and then they'll almost immediately turn around and resell the car. You would think, but they can't, because there's an NDA saying they can't sell the car for a certain amount of time. Now, you guys have probably seen Survivor, and you know that I've tried to be on Survivor for every year for like the past 5 years, and I don't think they're going to pick your boy, okay? So the first winner of Survivor ever, season 1, Richard Hatch, his life was ultimately ruined by Survivor. Now, a lot of people are going to argue about that because Richard Hatch is a very questionable individual anyhow, but essentially he won $1 million, right? His gift taxes for winning that $1 million should have been, it was like almost $200,000 or maybe over $200,000 for where he lived. Now, here's the problem with that. He didn't pay it. So he actually went to prison. He got sentenced for 4 years. And it was all said and done, they actually charged him over $3 million for tax evasion and fraud. But his story is very different. The reason why he said, I didn't pay it, is I'm not running from it. I'm not trying to hide from it. The producers of Survivor said they were going to pay it for me because I caught them all lying, cheating, and scheming when it came to this game, and they almost tried to fix the game and rig it. So when I caught them in this, they said, okay, man, we're not going to rig the game. We're not going to change this stuff. We'll pay your taxes for you, so that way you get the true $1 million. Now, of course, this is all hearsay. This is just Richard Hatch's story in court. But his story is pretty convincing because there's been Survivor scandal stuff this whole time that Survivor's ever been out. There's been tons of people that get caught cheating playing Survivor, but no penalties happen because they know that they'll bring in good ratings for the show. Yeah, I'm going to burn that bridge because I know you're never going to put me on Survivor. Okay, you put me on Squid Games, and I'll get to Squid Games in a minute because it ruined some lives too. I was on season 2 of Squid Games, if you guys didn't know it, and I like to talk about it. All right, so anyhow, back to Survivor. Richard Hatch, he got sentenced to 4 years in prison, but he was so bad in prison that he actually got sentenced to another 9 months. Like, that's how bad he was. Most people get out early. Nope, they gave him an extra 9 months. Now, there's a little short-lived TV show on Fox called The Moment of Truth, and this girl's name was Lori Clary. Anyhow, the show caused her and her husband to get a divorce. And good for him, because he needed to go on and move away from this lying, cheating hoe. Okay, so what happened is in 2008, The Moment of Truth was a game that came out, and it would, like, you would sit and take a polygraph test. And as long as you pass this polygraph test with a series of questions, you could keep moving forward. Well, she won $100,000. And at that time, she could have walked away with $100,000, or she could keep going for a chance to win $200,000. She chose to keep going for the $200,000. The game asked her, do you think you are a good person? Pretty simple, right? And she said, yes. Now, with her husband sitting in the crowd, he's like, okay, she's definitely going to pass this. She's a great mother to our kids. She's a great wife to me. She seems like a good person. The polygraph test hit the floor so hard that it almost broke the machine. The test went, and then it buzzed her. She lost all the money and got kicked off. So her husband starts asking questions. Why don't you think you're a good person? Why don't you, I mean, you said yes, but the machine said that you truly don't feel that way. What's going on? You got something you need to tell me? And she confessed to cheating on him while she was on the show, like backstage, getting ready for the show. She cheated on him, like there, okay? And this all came out, and he filed for divorce pretty much immediately. I don't blame him, And then the show got such bad backlash from that the ratings declined, and it went off there. Bad backlash. To me, that's a banger, buddy. That's Jerry Springer's whole deal. That's like the whole thing on Jerry Springer. They should have played into it so hard, but they didn't. In fact, people were terrified to go on the show afterwards, which should tell you something about America. People were afraid to go on the show afterwards, so the applicants plummeted, the people watching plummeted, like just all around. The show was shortly after canceled. Now I want to talk about Squid Games, the game that I was actually on, okay? If you blink, you miss me, but yes, I'm on Netflix. Season 2 of Squid Games. I was player 207. You can look that up. My name's Matt Crabtree. I ain't lying to you. So they make you sign a stack of NDAs, and this is for all game shows because it's called the non-spoiler clause. Because most game shows, like most seasons of Survivor and Squid Games and all this other stuff, the people who are there, the contestants, obviously know who wins. And you can actually, if you spoil that and say it to the press or say it to the public, you can even tell a single individual. They can sue you for more than what it cost to create the show. Because they can sue you for the show's cost, and they can sue you for the potential profits the show would have made. So, like, for example, Squid Games, the prize was $4.5 million. They could sue an individual for up to $10 million was what was on the paper that we signed for, spoiling the way it ended. Because, like I said, I was part of season 2. I knew who won months before the show came out. Okay? It was real easy to see who was coming back to the hotel and who didn't come back, But it ruined somebody's life there. And I'm not going to say the name of who it was, but one of the female contestants there, you might have saw a glimpse of her on the show, actually cheated on her husband while she was there. Because while you're there, we get there before the show starts, and when the show leaves, they tell you have to leave immediately, but a lot of people didn't. A lot of people hung around in London for a little while afterwards. She cheated on her husband while she was there, and left her husband for the man that she cheated on with while she was there. And then after that was over, they broke up, and then, of course, the husband didn't want to take her back. And it was all the gossip in the Squid Game contestants group chat that we got with all 400 and whatever of us that are in that group chat. So that game show right there, and that's not just on that show, that's everywhere. You'll hear that with Survivor, you'll hear that with Squid Games, you'll hear that with any show that puts a lot of people in a hotel far away. You're going to have to worry about that being a possibility that happens. And the biggest loser is the last one I'm going to put on this list, because if you guys have seen the documentary about it, you would probably know there was a contestant on season 1 and a contestant on season 8 whose bodies went into shock over the extreme dieting. And it wasn't just like, oh, they couldn't handle it. No, like their metabolism locked up, and now it's permanently altered. Doctors have already looked at them. Their metabolisms are permanently altered and burn fat at a slower rate than it was already burning fat. So after the show was over, they regained more weight than they actually came onto the show with, even though they retained those dietary habits, because their metabolic, I just forgot the whole damn thing. Anyhow, their bodies don't burn fat no more, I guess. Do those monster and conspiracy shows ever find anything? You know what I'm talking about, like Expedition Unknown, The Unexplained Files, Monster Quest, all that stuff. Why are they so popular if they never actually find anything? Well, they actually just did. So Expedition Unknown and the host from it, Josh Gates, has actually found multiple archaeological discoveries that are like renowned in the scientific world. But just this past week, there was a airplane crash that happened in the 1950s that killed 52 people. That was unexplained. It was one of those Bermuda Triangle type things. It was the Pan Am flight of 1952. And that show, all the Expedition Unknown stuff, just actually found the real flight. It's all over the news. If you guys haven't heard, they announced it this past week, even though they officially discovered it back in June. They're just now publicly announcing it because they wanted to make sure that this was the legit thing. After surveying the aircraft underwater is where they found it with a mini drone sub. They can confirm that it is the flight 252 that went missing in 1952, odd enough, that killed 52 people. How weird is that? It's really strange. So they did find this sub, and you can see the Pan Am logo right on the side of it. Pan Am is an airplane company I don't believe is around anymore. But this was leaving San Juan, Puerto Rico, heading back to the United States, and it crashed into the water. Now, for decades and decades, people's families, didn't know where their bodies were. They didn't know what happened. Upon looking at the records, it appears that they had a massive engine failure shortly after taking off, because, back then they couldn't track things the way they could track things now. They didn't know really exactly what happened and where it went down at. Now, these shows have found more than just this, though. So Monster Quest, the show that everybody makes fun of, that they're looking for like Bigfoot and all this different stuff, did you know one of the only footages that we actually have of giant squid alive swimming in the ocean is from the TV show Monster Quest? Where they're looking for sea serpents and stuff. Everybody makes fun of them. But yet they're hailed in the scientific community for having one of the only documented sightings of a giant squid. More than that, the giant squid they documented and filmed was more than twice the size that we previously thought giant squid could get up to. And that was already big. Now it's even bigger. All right. There's been tons of discoveries like that. So I used to always love the show Mountain Monsters. It was so stupid. It was so over the top. But they actually caught what would have been a state record wild boar, except when the wild boar was examined, it did have domestic hog DNA in it, which most wild boars do. But I did a little bit more digging. This pig weighed over 800 pounds, this wild boar did. And I thought, what's the record? So Oklahoma actually holds the United States record for the biggest wild boar. Now, if you look it up, it's going to quickly show that there's other wild boars that have been caught that weigh more. But Oklahoma's is unique. Its nickname is the Oklahoma Bruiser, and it was just caught 15 years ago. And it is actually, it was like almost 800 pounds, but it was purebred wild boar, which means none of its lineage had ever been in captivity. All the other state record and like world record wild boars at least have some domestic hog and pig DNA in them, and that's what helps them get to that big size. But this one, nearly 800-pound freak of nature, was just roaming wild. So like I said, those Monster Quest shows would have caught what they nicknamed Hogzilla, except it had that domestic pig DNA in it. Now, getting back on track here, Monster Quest actually also has one of the only documented sightings of what might be a monk seal. So monk seals were believed to be extinct. It's a very unique type of seal. Now, it's not officially been ruled unextinct because this footage, it wasn't 100% reliable, but it documents what could be a thought to be extinct species of seal. Now, moving forward, there's actually a show that came out called Alive or Extinct, where they would run around and try to find things that were extinct, like the dodo bird and, the Tasmanian tiger. And then they actually found one of the Galapagos tortoise species that was thought to be extinct since 1906. And this was just like 10 years ago. This was the Fernandina Galapagos tortoise. And like I said, no one had seen them since 1906 and they thought they were extinct. They actually found a female. Now, there's not been a male found yet, but they did find a female, proving the species is still alive. And the species lived to be incredibly old. So they could have found a female that was alive when it last got seen in 1906. We just don't know. But they actually found, like, science was rewritten from one of these monster shows that you could watch on Discovery Channel or History Channel. Now, is that the only extinct species that they found? No, they actually found the Indonesian giant bee. So it is the world's biggest bee species that has not been extinct for about 100 years. And they found one of those too just a few years after the Galapagos tortoise. So this one seemingly jokey show, kind of like the Curse of Oak Island or whatever, one day its viewers got to see them find a legitimate thought to be extinct species. Not once, but twice. Now, getting back on Josh Gates here, he is the most successful of all these like modern day archaeologists, and that's because he is a real archaeologist that happens to host a show that gets a lot of ridicule because they go looking for scary, spooky stuff and curses and, missing creatures and all this different stuff. He has actually found and documented multiple new flora and fauna species. Like, he is in the scientific books for finding entirely new documented species that no one had seen before. And he has found stuff that is thought to have been lost to history, like the lost tomb of Petra. So if you look up who found the lost tomb of Petra, it is Josh Gates and his team. They found 12 mummified bodies, as well as a room of like a treasury room. Now, if he wouldn't have been on TV, this room was worth millions of dollars. He could have done whatever he wanted to with it. It all got turned over to the scientific community. Of course, he does get a big reward for the findings of it, and he gets his TV show. But they found a lost tomb that people had been looking for hundreds of years. And this is probably my favorite one because there was a book that came out called The Secret in 1982, and it was a puzzle book that an author made, and it was a genius idea here. He made a book that was a real-life treasure hunt. And since 1982, no one had found this real-life treasure. Josh Gates found it. It was a $10,000 jewel that was buried in a public park in Boston. We're lucky a building didn't get like made over it or something. But yeah, he found that. He literally solved the puzzle book. That was this world famous book that came out in the, like I said, the early 80s that had people searching all over America for this, hidden treasure because he, said that he hid it in the public. Anybody should be able to access this. It's not going to take like some big engineering feat. And Josh Gates did. He found it. It was buried in a park. It wasn't buried that deep down. And he got it. $10,000 jewel right there. And sometimes they even find stuff that science can't explain. So, like, if you want to look this one up, it was the episode they did about the Rougarou. It's Rugaroo, the Rougarou. It's down in the Louisiana bayous. They actually found tracks and cast them that science could not explain. They could tell that it was not made from some fake fabricated thing. They could tell that it was an organic track. All these wildlife biologists looks at the tracks. But they could not definitively say what it was. So, did he really find the tracks for Rougarou? Who knows? What a Rougarou is, that's one of the few cryptids I've never really looked that much into. And if you're interested in ghost stuff, this remains the most debated scene of any ghost show ever. And it was season 1, episode 7 of Ghost Hunters, also known as TAPS. So this scene, Frank, one of the sound guys and tech guys, you can see him walking and his bag flies up and hits him in the chest/mouth area. Now, this knocked him down. And a lot of people could say, oh, this was fake or this was staged or whatever. Multiple people have looked at this footage. They cannot figure out a way that it was altered. It shows no signs that the footage was altered whatsoever. So even if they did some kind of special effects or props, what wasn't fake was the medical report that went with it. A National Guard medic off camera and off the record that wasn't even on the show had to look at him because it did happen at an Army base. When he looked at him, he could tell that he really did have abrasions and bruising from where this bag hit him. Frank, the guy that it happened to this day has always claimed that out of all the ghost hunting stuff they ever did, he didn't feel like a lot of it was real ghost, paranormal stuff. It was stuff that they would take and run with it. But he always maintains that that one instance was the thing that the show did not fake and that he had nothing involved in whatsoever. He said if somebody was in on that prank, that none of them were in on it and none of the production would ever admit to it. He said for years he would question the other cast and crew thinking that they had somehow rigged this bag or somehow somebody had connected a string to it. But, like I said, he was carrying and walking this bag for some time. To this day, he swears up and down that if there has ever been one ghost encounter that ever truly happened, it was the moment in season 1, episode 7, when his bag flew up and hit him. This bag weighed approximately about 40 pounds. So even if it was on a string, it would be very hard to make it fly up and have that kind of an impact. All of the people that are on that show have always maintained the same answer, even though they've admitted to a lot of other things. They've always maintained that one scene was absolutely not fabricated and they still can't explain it.